Hello and welcome to Our Own Canon, a show about Asian Americans and our relationship to art in an effort to build our own canon. So what do we have
You're
today,
so
Yeji?
good at
This is a
that.
little bonus episode, right? And I'm excited, and I think you're excited.
It is. It was very not planned, but it's gonna be great. As you can see, it's very not planned. Look at what I'm wearing. Um, but both of us watched the Barbie movie this weekend, and we figured because Simu Liu is in it, we had to do an episode on it.
you
It's
know,
just
you know what my one of my good friends, you know what she said the Asian connection is?
oh, what's the Asian
That all the
connection?
Barbies are probably made in China anyway. So the movie has an almost
Oh!
100% Asian rate.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
That's it's a little dark, it's a little out of pocket, but that's a good one.
So
I
this
like that
is the
one.
most Asian movie we've reviewed, right?
Yeah, I mean, clearly, if that's what we're using
It's
to
doing
to.
better than Forbidden Kingdom with Jason fucking Tripatakis. So
I don't know if we can. I mean, Jackie Chan's in it. That's
that
pretty
is pretty Asian
Asian.
and Jet Li.
That's pretty
But I feel
Asian.
like it loses a lot of points when it made Jason Tripatakis the main character. I mean, like that's
That's
something
also
else, dude.
true. Also, everybody's speaking English, so I don't know. Maybe you're right. Maybe Barbie is more Asian than the Forbidden
Also,
Kingdom.
Barbie didn't have white people saying "chink" in it, so bonus points to that.
True. Dude, I remember when we rewatched that for the first time, I was like, dang, I can't believe they actually said that, like, out loud. Like, I was actually taken aback. I was shocked. Okay, so we both watched the Barbie movie. An and I made a point kind of like not to talk about it too much because we want our conversation to kind of be as organic as possible. That's kind of how we do our best work, you know? It's just like in the moment.
The less we plan, the
So,
better.
no. Very ironic, but it's true. It does happen to be true. So, I'd love to like hear your initial thoughts on it before we kind of get started. Like, what were you expecting? What fit the mold of your expectations? What broke the mold for your expectations? Like, give me just a little rundown of how you're feeling, like when you walked in versus when you walked out.
So like, I literally had like rock bottom expectations for this movie because like I hadn't seen
What?
any of the promotional material and shit like that. So like, like I'm not really on the internet like that. So like I haven't seen any of the trailers. I
Yeah.
didn't know what to expect at all. So like basically I heard like Hollywood movie about like one of the most popular like consumerist toys ever made, right? Like I I expected nothing from this. Was supposed to be schlock. This was supposed to be just like straight filler camp. Nothing good here. We just get a look at Simulu, right? And like it's crazy.
And his abs.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's crazy. Like you walk in with that expectation, you walk out and you're like, wait, like I have to talk about this now.
Just
It's
having an
so much
existential
better than it has any
crisis.
right to be.
Yeah. I mean, I'm glad that you liked it. I definitely had a different coming in
Mm.
perspective. Like, I had very high expectations for this movie. Um, I knew that Greta Gerwig, she's the woman who directed Barbie and had a huge part in the screenplay and the writing of the film. She is the one who directed the reboot of Little Women that like Timothy Chalamet and Florence Pugh are in. She's done Lady
Lady
Bird.
Bird was good.
She's just an overall fantastic writer. So I knew that the content of it was going to be good, but I just couldn't tell like what the movie was going to be about.
Mm.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like I knew it was gonna be good. Like whether or not it was gonna be schlock, I knew it was gonna be good. Um, I just didn't know like what the plot was gonna be because you look at like the Barbie movie and you look at Barbie movies previously in the past, which I grew up on old Barbie movies like the cartoon ones. So for those, they're kind of like Barbie is cast in a role and she's like playing a character in another movie. So it's like a film, like a normal film, and the main character is Barbie,
Uh-huh.
but she's like playing the character of the movie. So like for example, like the Swan Lake Barbie movie, like Barbie plays Odette, who is like a character in the Swan Lake
Mm.
Ballet. You know, so I didn't know. I knew it wasn't going to be that obviously because it was like the Barbie movie and it's supposed to be Barbie being herself. So I just didn't have any frame of reference for what the plot was going to be because it's just like this is just not what like I'm used to seeing for Barbie movies necessarily. Um, and I had kind of seen rumblings about it being like woke, of course, which is like what all the conservative people were calling it, like online. They were like, "Oh, this is like woke trash." I saw that one picture of like Ben Shapiro standing in front of the Barbie sign where he's like, "I'm gonna talk about this movie next episode. Tune in for the most woke trash movie I've ever seen." Like I saw that picture and like I saw a bunch of people memeing on him. Um, and so I was just like generally excited because things that piss off conservative people, I get excited for. I was hype. So walking out of it, it was definitely a different kind of woke that I was expecting it to be.
It
Um,
definitely, like, in the most classical sense of the word woke, before it got like mainstreamed and turned into whatever it means now. Like, in the most classical sense of the word woke, it is woke.
well, yeah, yeah. Um, I think it's interesting also how the word woke and this kind of concept of like woke has become this ideology of wokeism where people think it's like this thing that the media is trying to like push onto you, and it's this like metaphysical tangible thing like religion. Like wokeism is like it's like a belief that you can like prescribe to and like push on to other people. Um which is just fascinating, and we can get more into that later. But no, I was very pleasantly surprised even though I already had high expectations. I think that I was expecting it to be I was expecting it to be very campy, which obviously, like, it's a Barbie movie with a bunch of grown adults playing Barbies. So, like, of course, it's going to have, like, campy elements. But I think this movie is an example of aesthetic camp and like comedic camp done very very well. If we're talking about it just on like an artistic level, the amount of like writing talent and skill that it takes to make something like this not cheesy and not corny at every single turn, and even the corny and cheesy parts make them into something compelling and real and something that an audience can really hold on to, is just so special and baffling to me. Like I wish I could write like Greta Gerwig, but no, I was very happy walking out of the movie, and I saw it with a couple of my close friends, which was really really great. So yeah, definitely a longer summary than yours. I will say, you were like, rock bottom expectations, came out pleasantly
I
surprised, and I was like, oh, let me tell you about
I
it.
straight up thought it was just like, haha, Barbie and Oppenheimer at the same time, and it was just a meme. I was expecting nothing out of it, but here we are.
Wait, did you see Oppenheimer
I
too
did
or no?
not actually.
Okay.
I might later. I know the university's doing a screening of it, and I might just like,
Oh shit, I didn't know that.
you know, I'll tell you that later. It's not important to what we're saying, but uh, actually, can you like so like I said, like I wasn't really on the internet. I don't know what's happening. Can you like explain this Barbenheimer thing? Because
Oh
like
yeah, so yeah, yeah, yeah. No,
because
I
like
can
I think this
absolutely.
is like a
So
cultural phenomenon of like our
it
generation.
it kind of is. It kind of is. So, it all kind of started, I believe. And I might be wrong about this, and I can do some like I can dig a little bit deeper into it. But I believe it started when it was revealed that the Barbie movie, and Oppenheimer were going to be released the same weekend.
Hmm.
Um, or like it was premiering the same day. It was just coming out on like the same general
Hmm.
time, and everybody was like, this is crazy, like what a weird crossover slash like coincidence, like was this planned, like just complete. I mean, obviously, like at face value, those movies, those concepts are like aesthetic opposites, and so everybody was like, dang, we got to do like both. You have to like walk into the Barbie movie in like one outfit, and then you go to Oppenheimer in another outfit for the different aesthetic, and you do both, and then all of a sudden it kind of just like started evolving into this thing called Barbenheimer, which was
Proof that the
the
internet is a weird place.
proof that the internet is a weird place, and like if I was explaining it to an alien, I don't know how exactly I would explain any of that, but Barbenheimer is like the double feature of Barbie and Oppenheimer. Like you go watch Barbie and you watch Oppenheimer in the same day, and if you are really really committed to the bit, you'll wear one outfit for Barbie and you'll wear another one for Oppenheimer, or you'll wear like a double feature outfit, so like something that combines the two concepts. So there were people who like were wearing all pink versions of like 1940s outfits. There were people who were wearing like Peaky Blinders esque outfits to Barbie.
Hmm.
It was just yeah, it was very cool. Kind of internet bonding moment. But my friends and I did watch both. We did Barbie and we watched
Did you do it
Oppenheimer.
back to back, or
Um,
did you take a break between?
we like took a Chili's break.
Okay.
We like went to Chili's for like for like 45 minutes. We just sat down, had a margarita and some appetizers, and then we went right back into the movie theater. Um,
Yeah, you got the margaritas before you do
but
Oppenheimer. Yeah, that's how
no,
you do
yeah,
it.
we got to do the margaritas before Oppenheimer. But everybody in our movie, everybody in my group was dressed like more for Barbie than for
Hmm.
Oppenheimer, and so that was like kind of cool, like being able to kind of sit in Oppenheimer, like surrounded by people who were like dressed in pink. Definitely lighten the mood because
Probably good.
it's a
It's
dark
gotta be
movie, but
rough.
I think you'll enjoy it though. It's a good one. As much as like so I was thinking about this earlier and I would like to know your thoughts on it as well, but I think for a movie like Oppenheimer, it's almost easier to imbue a sense of artistic pseudo reality to a movie like Oppenheimer that is like a historical fiction work, right? Or based heavily in history, and then it's art, like it's brought into this like artistic environment,
Hmm.
right? um, which is film, like filmmaking, writing, acting, and all of these things that like the director and everybody can kind of mess with. And I would love to hear your thoughts on like, do you think it would be easier to make a piece of art like Oppenheimer, where you're imbuing the art into it, or a piece like Barbie, where the art is kind of like where you're starting? Like you start at other people's imagination, you start at other people's creativity, because people play with Barbie dolls, and that's how they know Barbie is how they played with her as a kid, and how their imaginations came up with her as a character and like what she did um, for them as like with their imagination, right? So do you think it'd be easier to make something like Barbie where you're starting at a point of like focal creativity based on other people's imaginations, or do you think it would be easier to do Oppenheimer where it's like this very staunch stark world that you have to imbue with like creative nature that isn't already necessarily there?
I don't know which one would be easier, but I do think I would struggle a lot more with Oppenheimer because, like, I feel like
Mm-hmm.
as a figure already, he already gets mythologized a lot, right?
That's
As
true.
like a cultural figure, he's a very mythologized. Like he's probably it sounds weird to say because it wasn't that long ago, but Oppenheimer low key is like a folklorish type person in our culture, right? The
Mm-hmm.
idea of like this man who like made the bomb and is also like kind of regretful that he made the bomb and all that stuff, right? Like it borders on folklore more than I think it borders on reality, right? And I
Mm-hmm.
think trying to unpack the man and the myth, right,
Mm-hmm.
is an intensely challenging endeavor, and I don't envy the person who tried who had to be there to do it. You know, like I think that's
Mm-hmm.
genuinely a really difficult thing, and to do it with the right amount of respect, um, it's just like that's maybe more than I think I could be able to do, especially with like my skill set now. And I'm not ever sure I could get to that point. Barbie on the other hand,
Don't
like
sell yourself short.
I also think Barbie on the other hand, like the expectations are just like you can make a Barbie movie and it'd still be fine, right? So I
That's
guess in that way
true.
Barbie would be easier, but if you're talking about making this specific Barbie movie with all the social commentary and shit like that, that is also really difficult in its
Yeah.
own way.
Yeah.
Uh, and also
I
me as a person, I think would just like the opportunity to work on the Barbie movie more than I think I would with Oppenheimer. I think
Yeah.
I don't know if it's easier technically, but it would just be easier, more easy creatively because I'm already kind of generally in that headspace, you know.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. And I think I would there's a part of me that thinks that mythologizing about something that's happened in history is necessarily easier than tackling something that is changing in the present.
Mm-hmm.
Because what you have has already happened necessarily, and you're not necessarily diving into something that is, again, still a problem.
Mm-hmm.
So the landmines that you're avoiding, you know how to navigate them because there are people before you that have made those mistakes, and you can look back at history and be like, okay, hindsight's 2020. I know, well, these are the landmines that I can avoid creatively, right? This is how I do this respectfully. Because there's just a time span of like, okay, people doing things in between there that you can lean on as either inspiration or the baseline for what you're building off of, right? With something like Barbie, I think that, not to say that like Barbie, I'm pretty sure Barbie dolls came out before the 1940s. I should probably fact check that before I put it supremely on the record. I'm gonna fact check that in a second after I finish talking, but like Barbies are still sold nowadays. They're still played with in a conventional manner, like the same way that they have been, you know, like from when I was a kid. I feel like people still play with Barbie dolls, um, in the same way. And with on top of all of that, the social commentary that they do fit in the film, I feel like that's a massive undertaking just in terms of like, yes, like here's how we're going to do this, here's how we're going to appeal to modern audiences, and here is a whole host of stuff that nobody's ever really tread before.
Mm-hmm.
um Thank you. 1959, first Barbie doll. So about 2 decades after uh 1942. um So yeah, like I would say that I think that Barbie would be more difficult just having to consider all of the present social
Yeah.
things going on. And I mean, during the time that they made the movie, things changed about the things that they were talking about in the
Yeah.
movie,
The
right?
very
So
existence of the movie being made necessarily changed the perception of Barbie as the movie was not
right.
even done yet. Yeah.
Right. Right, exactly. So I just think that's very meta and interesting, and like you can't ever account for things like that. So for me, like the way that I would, I guess, like answer that question and the way that I was thinking about it was like I think that Oppenheimer would be easier to make artistically just because you have like more things to work off of versus with Barbie, like there's just a whole host of things that you just don't know
That,
how
that's
to
kind of
how
funny
to
because I feel like
navigate,
people who like see us would think like on Anne would be the one to make Oppenheimer and Yeji would be the one to make Barbie, but we landed on the other side. I'd rather be making Barbie here.
I don't know though. I think that like you have an artistic streak that I don't have in terms of just like coming up with things like out of thin air. I feel like my and maybe we're like getting into the weeds here, but I feel like my artistic like abilities are very much based in things that I've seen before, whereas like you're very much a trailblazer. So I think that I would say that's fitting. I guess people that don't know us as well like wouldn't say so, but
Just wait
I
until
think
we
that's
get
fitting.
that new segment out and they will know.
Oh, guys, you got to tune in for that
Yeah,
one. It's gonna be
y'all
great.
ready.
It's
Y'all
gonna be
ready.
so good. Okay, so I figure just because this movie is so new, um, that instead of doing like a bad summary, which also like this movie has so many moving parts, I feel like it's just impossible to really encompass all the things that really happen in it. If we just wanted to hit like a couple of big points that we think the movie is tackling, like broad topics that we think the movie is really covering. I know it's a bit of like a turn of form for us, but what do you think about that? Just because it's so new, like it literally dropped this weekend. So I'm thinking maybe not like a whole rundown because it'll be really fresh in people's memory when this episode
Yeah, look at us
drops.
being topical. We're actually on the news
No, yeah,
cycle.
for real. We're really trying, guys. We did Spider-Man recently, and we're doing this one now, and we're really trying to stay on top of it.
I
So,
do have a question for you before we start, though. What
yeah,
is like
absolutely.
your relationship to Barbie dolls growing up? I'm just curious. I feel like
Oh,
it might
that's
also
fascinating.
provide good context for this conversation.
That's actually a really good question. I had a ton of Barbies
Oh,
growing up.
really?
They were probably like my favorite things to play with, just because I really liked playing like pretend in terms of like coming up with these wild scenarios where I'm like, I need multiple people to play out the scenario. And so, like,
Hmm.
I would use my Barbie dolls to like play out that scenario. And it would be like things I'd seen before, like in movies or in TV shows. And I'd be like, okay, well, like, here's how I would do it differently. And I would like cast my Barbies in like the roles of the people in the shows or like in the movie.
Hmm.
Um, and my mom always made sure that I had like a diverse cast of Barbies, which I really appreciate. Like I had Barbies of multiple colors. I know that like used to not necessarily be a
Yeah.
thing, which is something that is talked about in the movie as well. The tendency to obviously like when you think of a Barbie, you think of a white, blonde, blue-eyed woman, right? I didn't necessarily like default to that just because I did have like more Barbies. But the one thing I will say is very accurate and something that I didn't think they were gonna lean into as much as they did, but they did, and I think it's really interesting because it's such a meta commentary on like the way that little girls imagine like men in reference to women and how you're like trying to figure out the social dynamics of how men interact with women. And when you play with Barbie dolls, you try to implement those same things. And as you're figuring out and as you're playing pretend and as you're coming up with these imaginary scenarios, you like put your Barbie dolls in situations that you like think. You're like,
Hmm.
I think this is how people interact with one another. And so that like that part where Ken is like, I think I should stay over tonight. And she's like, why? And he's like, because we're boyfriend, girlfriend. And she's like, to do what? And he's like, I'm actually not sure. Like, that is so good and so accurate because you look at like media and stuff and you're like, oh yeah, like the guy's staying the night, but you're a kid, so you don't fucking know why, right? And so it's like, oh yeah, they're like boyfriend, girlfriend, and they're gonna like spend the night together, but you don't get why and you don't understand why. You just understand that it's like a parasocial dynamic between men and
Hmm.
women. Um, and I really appreciate that they leaned into that. I appreciate that, obviously, as mostly girls play with Barbies, it's more of like a female centric world that they put their Barbies in because they themselves are female. And so that whole thing of like, oh, it's like girls' night every night, you know, like that's kind of also very accurate to the way that like young girls play with their Barbies because like they don't know what boys do on boys' night, so they're not gonna like have a Ken night with, you
Hmm.
know what I mean? Like that's not obviously something that, I mean, maybe if you guys like did that, maybe so. But I my Kens went in the bin every time like night fell and it was supposed to be like slumber party time. You know what I
uh,
mean? Like Kens disappeared, and then it would just be the Barbies because like he didn't have sleepovers with boys at that
mm,
age, it was like all girls. And so all those things, it's this very particular attention to detail and this very particular attention to like the way of a child's mind and the way that a child's psychology imagines these particular scenarios. And it's very good. I think they did a really really good job with that, and I can attest at least the way that I played with Barbies, it was very very accurate. um
I'm glad I asked that
and so
question because
yeah.
it's bringing a lot more things into context that I just kind of wrote off as fun jokes into more like they're still
Yeah.
fun jokes, but like they actually have a deeper dimension to them now because like I
Yeah.
didn't catch that aspect of that joke, but like yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And like the same
Yeah.
thing when like they were like the Barbie doll houses, and they're like, "Where do the Kens live?" And like,
I
I
don't know. Yeah, they go in the fucking bin because you didn't have Ken dream houses.
don't know.
Like the dream houses were made just for the Barbies. And so, like once all like the day partying was done, Ken's just like kind of went wherever.
The Kens
Um
are canonically homeless.
no, they really are. They really just kind of hang out in the dumpster until they're like needed, really needed. Which I think is another interesting aspect to this. So we can start kind of getting into sort of this broad topic of men as an accessory versus women as an accessory, which I love. I absolutely love, just as an umbrella appreciation of all of the social dynamics and like political topics that they cover in this like film. I love the way they did all of them.
Yeah.
I was talking to a friend earlier today, and I think a issue or a qualm that they had with the film was that it wasn't necessarily groundbreaking. Um, it wasn't doing anything. It wasn't breaking new ground on feminism and necessarily like really wrangling people out of their comfort zone in terms of like gender and social dynamics, but from my perspective, and of course, like you can deign to disagree with this, I think that it took the material that it had from before and kind of perfected it almost
Hmm.
in this way that anybody who's watching the film can understand what the writers are putting down and the social dynamics that are being examined. They make it very clear, make it very concise, they make it easy to understand, even for a younger audience, right? Because, like, it's a PG-13 film. Like young kids can watch this as well, right? Just an easily digestible way of understanding why these issues are important and how they can manifest in real life.
Yeah.
Um, so I don't think it like I wouldn't say that anything in this is necessarily revolutionary. It didn't change the topical theory of feminism and start a fourth wave. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? Like, I don't think that's true, but I think it did what it did and what it set out to do very well. So, what do you think about that?
Yeah,
Like, as an umbrella over like all of the topics we're going to be discussing.
I'm with you on this. Like like there is a certain criticism to be had that I kind of agree with what your friend's saying. Like this is no intersectional feminism, right? Like this
Yeah,
this
it's no Simone de
yeah,
Beauvoir.
like if I were like really putting on like the academic lens that that we read these books, we know, right? Like I would say like there are certain things and that don't really like it's not up to date with the academic literature, right?
Oh yeah,
Especially in the way
no.
that's like missing like topics of intersectionality, right?
Hmm.
Which man, I'm nerding out on some philosophy right now, but like,
No, you really are. I love it. Keep going.
but like there are definitely problems in which it's like missing out on like topics of intersectionality, and there's like a whole current of like feminism right now. It's like no feminism without intersectionality, and I really do agree with that, right?
Hmm.
But
Could
does
you define, just really quickly, very simply, if you can, define what intersectionality is for the people who do not know?
okay.
Because I feel like you just dropped that term, and I feel like there are probably people out there that are not going to know what that is.
All
So,
right, so for modern
On's bad summary of philosophy. Let's
putting me on the spot
go.
here. Uh,
Let's
so
go.
for like current modern sociology philosophy like topics where philosophy there's like a I forget what the exact term of it is, but like there is a lot of current philosophy is in this weird like position in between sociology and philosophy where we
Uh huh.
think about problems relating to like where we try to deconstruct hierarchies in various ways. So right, like you have critical race theory that tries to deconstruct white hierarchies in terms of race. You have uh like more like socialist philosophies that try to deconstruct things in economic systems, and you have like feminism which tries to
Mhm.
deconstruct things in terms of patriarchy, right? And we have other
Mhm.
ones like anarchism and stuff like that, but in general that like that's what they're trying to do, right? um and if you kind of combine all of that together, we kind of get like what I'm like being real loose about it, but we get like what I would consider like intersectionality, right? Which is to like take different points from these different like philosophical sociological thoughts, right? and trying to
Mm-hmm.
find where they intersect, right? And
Mm-hmm.
how the people in those intersections like have specific unique problems, right? So like uh normal feminism would just talk about women, but intersectional feminism would look at the intersection between, say, race and woman. So we would talk about like
Mm-hmm.
for the podcast, like for us, we would talk about like Asian women in particular, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that would be like an intersectional analysis on
Mm-hmm.
on the issue, right? And
Mm-hmm.
while this movie really does do the feminism stuff, I think, well, it doesn't really do it in the intersectional way, right? There
Mm-hmm.
are diverse faces, but you don't actually ever see specific ways in which, say, Asian women or Black women, right, are affected by patriarchy. We only
Mm-hmm.
talk about patriarchy in broad terms, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and like that's a genuine criticism you can have about it, but it's
Mm-hmm.
also a Hollywood film, right?
Yeah.
And like, I guess we can do better with media, and probably we should expect better, but from all so I do understand the criticism to some degree, but also like considering all the other Hollywood stuff that's been coming out, I do think it pushes a lot more like buttons than it doesn't, right?
Oh
Because
yeah.
like the craziest like feminist thing I can think about like before this, I don't know, like Marvel had the whole thing where like a bunch of women like stood next to each other when they were fighting the bad guys, right? Like this is marketably on a different level than that. This genuinely has academic feminist thought in it, right? Whereas like the best we were getting before that was just like a photo shoot, like
Women can do
so
it.
yeah.
Yeah.
So like I understand the desire for it to go a little further, right? I personally
Uh-huh.
myself would have enjoyed it if it went a little further, but I also can sympathize with the fact that like this is pushing a lot further than I thought anything Hollywood can put out would put out,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. I agree definitely with that. I think that when I went into it, I was expecting it to have that obviously when it was pissing off conservatives, I was like, okay, it's gonna have stuff that's gonna piss off conservatives in it, right? And call it wokeism or whatever you want to call it, but it's gonna have things in it that people will consider liberal. Oh no. Um, but there's something so fascinating about the way that they tackle concepts that feel so difficult to
Mm-hmm.
explain, but are actually quite simple. And the way that they frame them is very simple. And it's so difficult to explain, partially because a lot of times when we're explaining these issues or when we are having conversations about these topics, it's not necessarily with people that we agree with.
Yeah.
Um, and that's something that I struggle with a lot. I have a really hard time talking about these things with people that don't agree with me, just particularly because I think that I deign to not like fight with people. I don't like pushing people's buttons. That seems so out of character for me, especially for like the podcast cuz I'm such a crazy asshole on this podcast, but in real life, it's very intimidating to try and explain these concepts, especially to someone who has the intention of antagonizing you. Um, and when I would get into conversations about topics like these with people who had the intention of antagonizing me, I did not know how to handle it. I would either get super upset and really, try to force like whatever I was trying to explain out in a way that didn't necessarily do much in the way of like being productive and having an actual conversation. And something that I think this film does so wonderfully well is that it's like, no, it's actually like this simple, and let's show you how simple it is by delineating this parasocial interaction within the context of these two different worlds.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that you can't explain to people on paper. It's very visual. It's very, let me give you an example. Let me act this out in front of you so that you can see what it looks like on one side and on the other. For instance, The very short clip, you blink and you fucking miss it. At the very beginning of the movie, there are Barbies playing volleyball and there are Kens on the side cheering them on. And then later, when Barbie comes back to Barbie Land and she looks out on the beach, it's a bunch of dudes playing volleyball and a bunch of girls cheering them on. And she looks confused, and everybody else looks confused too. And it's this psychology of remembering, like, oh, like I saw this scene, the same scene with different people, like 30 minutes ago at the beginning of this movie, and now they're showing it to me again in a different way. And it's different. The way that they're showing it to me is different, right?
Hmm.
For instance, you'll notice that the Kens at the beginning of the movie, when they are cheering them on, they're not necessarily wearing like scanty clothing. Like they're on the beach, but they're wearing shirts and shorts. And then later, when the girls are cheering them on, like they're wearing short skirts, they have like midriff tops. Um, the way that it's framed and the way that it's shown is very different. So that's the way that this movie goes about like explaining these things. It's this visual dynamic with the audience where they're like, "Oh, you saw this? Now look at this. You saw this? Now look at this. Isn't it different? Like, can you see how it's different? Can you see what I'm getting at here? Do you understand why this works and this doesn't, or why this feels this way and this feels another way?" And all of that stuff is also operating obviously within the context of like we live in the real world, we live in a patriarchy. Most people know what a patriarchy looks like, even if they don't know what a patriarchy looks like, because we live in a fucking patriarchy. And so to see just real life, right, like just the day to day that people live, juxtaposed with just Barbie Land at the very beginning of the movie, is like in and of itself this like metaphysical interaction of like the movie with the audience, which is so fucking cool. And I can't do that. I can't explain something like that. I can't like shove it down your throat and be like, "Listen, this is how," you know? And I loved that. I thought
Yeah,
that was so freaking
it
cool.
does kind of make me jealous in a way because like as philosophy like people, like we spend a lot of time trying to do our best to explain things as best as possible.
Dude, I cannot
And
fucking tell you
and
how frustrating it is.
like this is a really great primer for like feminist like academic feminist study, right? Like it won't get you all the way. You won't get to like the modern like readings of it and all the interesting debates and stuff that are going on, right, in like modern
Mm,
academic feminism. But like to get started, to really start the conversation, to really like get the
mm-hmm.
base points down, like dude, like I don't know if I could write a better paper.
Right? No, it's so good. And for what reason? Like, it's a fucking Barbie
It's a
movie.
Barbie. It's a Hollywood Barbie movie.
For what freaking reason? It's so good. Um, so overall, though, like this juxtaposition, obviously, between like Barbie Land, which is a matriarchy, versus the real world, which is a patriarchy, versus like Ken Land, I believe it was called, when like Ken takes over Barbie Land and he makes it a patriarchy, or at least he really fucking tries. Um, like, what was your favorite part of like that trio dynamic, and how did you see that kind of reflecting onto the real world, and like, what are your thoughts about all of that stuff?
Man, that's a hard question.
It is kind of a hard hitting question.
uh, man, I let's think.
To adjust.
Yeah, I think it's like I think seeing I really like what they did with Ken's character in regards to all of this, right?
Mm-hmm.
Getting him to like go through the stages of like being from Barbie Land, right? Dealing with like
Mm-hmm.
that whole thing where he like feels like, man, the character development and motivation for Ken's character is honestly a lot better than I thought now that I think about it. But like,
Mm-hmm.
but feeling like an object and inadequate and useless and like only good for like the beach. And then
I'm gonna beat you off so hard.
PG-13 movie.
That's the best. That's the best part of the movie, as we're at the beginning, and he's like, "I'll beat you off right now. Oh, let's beat each other off. I'll beat you both off." I'm like, this is the most incredible piece of art that has come out of the 21st century. Changed my fucking mind.
It definitely was a movie of our generation for that
It
joke
was so
alone.
good for that joke alone.
But yeah, but seeing him like that, then like, man, seeing him then go into the real world and discover patriarchy, it's just priceless. It's
Yeah.
so funny. um,
I
yeah, what were you saying?
like okay. So for instance, like when they go to the first when they first go to the real world, right? And Barbie and Ken are like roller skating around, and Barbie just keeps making comments about like how objectified and unsafe she
Hmm.
feels, like, and whereas Ken is like, "Oh my god, like it feels different here. Like I feel like I'm being seen for the first time." Like,
Dude,
what was going through your head when you were watching that sort of evolve, like
bro,
that scene sort of come together?
that line where he says, like, people are like ogling me, but there's no undertone of violence. I lost
Yeah.
my shit. It's so funny. It's so funny, dude. I lost my shit with that one.
Yeah, me
That
too.
was a top tier joke.
That was so
And
good.
I think that's what it really started settling into me, where it's like, oh, this movie is like this movie like is pushing it a lot further than I would have expected from this movie.
Mhm.
Because like
Yeah.
I like that was like that wasn't even subtext. It's just straight text, dude. Like
Yeah.
like they just said it. They just said
There
it.
wasn't. It's not subtext. It's just straight
It's just
text.
straight text.
Oh, I love that. That's so good. No, yeah. Did you were you like surprised at how unsubtle it was,
I
or
was
were you just kind of like vibing with
I
it?
was I was so surprised with how unsubtle it is because I feel like
Yeah, surprised. Yeah.
when we talk about these issues and things like that, like especially with people that don't particularly disagree, it's like you kind of have to like you're kind of in this mode of like pulling your punches a bit, really trying to like
Uh
tone
huh.
it down, right, and trying to like meet them on their grounds
Mhm.
and things like that. So to see a movie just like shit, just say it, just say
Mhm.
it
Yeah.
like yeah, when like men do that type of stuff, like yeah, it makes a woman feel uncomfortable, and there is a genuine degree of like potential like violence behind it, right? And it
Uh
just
huh.
said it. It didn't try. It didn't have to like stoop down to anyone's level. It didn't have to like try to mince words. And I think that's really
Mhm.
valuable that it didn't, right? That it
Mhm.
just said it. And like maybe it's not going to convince anyone who disagrees, but definitely for the people who do already agree, like, and especially women who go through it, I imagine it's a moment of like just getting to feel validated and what's the word? Just getting to feel validated in that way, and
Mhm.
it would feel empowering in a way. I would imagine just
Mhm.
being able to just say it.
Mhm. I would say that I was also surprised, but I was also at that point in the movie, I was like, "Oh, okay, like I get what they're doing with this." I was like catching on, especially cuz right before that, right, it's like Kin insisting that he's going to come with her and her being like, "No,
Oh
like you're
yeah.
going to slow me down. Like I really don't want you to come," right? In this way of like, "Oh, like interesting." Like they're really going at it, and they're really not being subtle about it, and then it got to that scene where like they're just walking around in the real world, and like he's starting to feel like so good about himself, and she's just like, "I'm scared and I've never felt this way before." I was like, "Oh shit, they're doing it. They're gonna go all in on this. That's fucking crazy." I think that was when I realized that like the movie was actually serious about what it was trying to do. At up until that point, I was like, okay, well, there's jokes here and there, and like they're all pretty like subtle, and they can be taken a couple of ways. But then when he just says, "Wow, like I'm being checked out and ogled, but there's no undertone of violence," and she's just like, "I'm scared." I was like,
They
"Damn,
did it.
like, oh my god, they're doing the thing. They're doing the thing." And I just felt proud too, because I think you came in with rock bottom expectations, and I kind of came in expecting to be disappointed. I had high expectations, but I was like, listen, if it's just a fun romp with nothing deeper, like it's fine, you know,
Mm,
and I'll have fun watching it either way. And it's a fucking Barbie movie, like it's not that
yeah.
serious, right? But at that point, I was like,
Oh, they did it.
oh my god, this is gonna be good, and it's gonna be good, good, and people thought about this, um, and I kind of love the way also that they play into like the Barbies kind of being. I mean, they're a little bit clueless, obviously, right? Because they're in a new world and they don't know, you know, like any social etiquette for the real world, right? And like that part where like Barbie walks up to those construction guys and she's like, "I do not have a vagina and he does not have a penis. We do not have genitals." It's like so fucking funny, right?
Mm.
Because they just don't have like any concept of real world etiquette. And I like that they use that to their advantage to do like exposition or to have the characters just like talking out loud about their perspectives, because I think that makes it work a lot better as well. Because I was talking about the visual aspect of being able to be like, okay, here's an example of this, right? But obviously, it helps to have somebody like dumb it down for you and explain it. And when they do dialogue that way, it's not necessarily them like explaining it, but it is kind of them dumbing it down. And I like that. I like also that they made Ken the main person to do most of that dumbing down.
Yeah, yeah.
I think that was effective as well. Um cuz just psychologically also like any men in the film or any men watching the film, like men in movie theaters pay more attention to what guys in movies say than what girls in movies
Yeah.
say. And so I think it was a very purposeful, intentional choice to make Ken be the one like that said out loud, like, "Oh, I'm feeling ogled, but like I'm not afraid. Like there's no sense of violence." It's like that was very on purpose to have him be the one to say
Yeah.
that,
I
right?
do feel like you're
Um
right. It would have flown a lot more under the radar if it was just Barbie saying she's like scared and all that stuff because like I think you're right. Men like would listen to men more, and also think there's something about it that's being said that like it's also been said by women so much before, right?
oh
So to
yeah.
get the literal like antithesis of that coming from like a dude, actually, I think was you're right. It's a really good move. It's a really powerful move, right? And really hammers the point
Mhm.
home for those who might not already be on board with what this movie is trying to do. Yeah.
Mhm. So good. So good. Any more thoughts about men as accessories versus women as accessories and the difference between like Barbie Land and the real world and any of that stuff? Like, is there anything you wanted to touch on with
No, not right now. I do think we exhaust. I don't think we exhausted those topics,
that?
but I can't particularly think of anything there, so I'll let you keep going wherever
Okay.
you're going.
All right. Let's move on then. Um, so I want to talk about the way that Mattel makes fun of itself with the corporate guys in the Mattel office, with Will Ferrell and like the whole of Mattel's corporate office basically being run by men. There's this really great bit in that scene where Barbie comes in and she's like, "Oh, I would love to talk to like the woman in charge, your CEO," and he goes, "That's me." And she just goes through like a list of executives, and he's like, "Oh, that's me, that's me, that's me," and they're all men. And then at one point, there's this guy, like he's kind of like a lower level employee. He raises his hand and he's like, "I'm a man without any power. Does that make me a woman?" So good. So fucking good. Oh my god. All right.
uh,
So, what did you think about the corporate
Bro,
commentary?
I was so excited because like you see it coming, like the dude gets the phone
Uh-huh.
call, he's in the little cubicle, like right, and like it's already just kind of fucking ridiculous. It's really funny because like Barbie Land's ridiculous. You go into the real world, and it's more or less how the real world works, right? It's pretty serious, right?
Mhm.
Like they're touching on serious topics, and then it cuts to like Mattel's corporate offices. You're in the cubicle, and then everything suddenly feels like a cartoon again, right? And
Yeah.
like
Yeah,
I
yeah,
love
yeah.
that because like inherently, corporate structures don't make any fucking sense. They basically are already cartoons. So you see the dude at the cubicle. He's freaking out because of the Barbie thing, right? So he goes up to the executive floor, and then it opens, and I see a room full of white men, and I was like, "They did it! They
Yes,
did
they
it!"
did it.
Because like it's so easy like for like a movie like this to like try to be like colorblind and diverse, right? And they're gonna populate it with like men
Hmm.
and women and like races and all that stuff. But no, this movie
Yeah,
literally just like
just for the promos. Just this is how it really looks in real life, guys. We're super diverse. We hire from all backgrounds, all people. I thought that was so funny, and I'm really glad that Mattel stuck to their guns on this
I'm
because
surprised the movie got away with it.
I'm surprised they did too, but I'm also really glad, and I think that I don't know. I think I think this might be overlooked just because maybe we take it for granted, but like that is an executive decision that was made that could have been shot down.
Yeah,
Do you know what I mean?
yeah.
Like at any point in the creative process, there could have been someone on the Mattel team to be like, actually, no, like I actually don't like the vibes that this is giving for our company, and I don't think it looks good for us. I don't think it's a wise decision to make, so we're gonna change it. Um, and honestly, I don't think it would have made the world of difference to the movie. Like, yes, the white executive guys like are a part of the movie. They kind of like chase Barbie around at some points, and like obviously the bit of them all being white guys like is a part of the movie that wouldn't exist if they weren't all white guys. So
Mm.
like yeah, that would go away, but like at the very base level, like if there were a couple of women in there and there were a couple of people of color, like it wouldn't necessarily have made a huge impact to the movie. But like it just took it that one step
Yeah.
further into greatness, and I fucking love that. You know what I mean? Like I don't think it would have taken away anything, but it definitely made it better. And I'm really, really, really appreciative that they did stick to their guns on this, and like I don't want to take that for granted. Like I know how corporate structures work, especially in the fucking entertainment industry. And like at any given point, anybody high enough in Mattel that was like, "This makes me uncomfortable. Actually, like, I don't think it's a good idea,"
It could, yeah. I,
and they'd still pass through. So I'm like, listen, kudos. Like I'll give credit where credit is due. Like if this didn't get shot down, like hey, say what you will about obviously like the meta commentary that what's the teenage girl's name?
Sasha.
Sasha, yeah, where she's like Barbie like encourages hyper consumerism and all of this stuff, and obviously like there was a bunch of advertising for the Barbie movie, and they came out with their own line of Barbie. Is like, of course, I understand. Yes, like it's a company. Yes, I get it. Hypocrite. Yes, 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 all valid, all true, but I will give kudos where kudos are due, and I think this deserves kudos, like genuinely, because they didn't have to do it. They didn't have to do it, but they
It
did.
could have so easily been
Fuck
shut
yeah.
down. Yeah, I think the most interesting thing about the decision is the fact that it exists, more than any like joke it leads to or anything,
Right?
right?
It's so good. And the more you think about it, the more I feel like the more you think about it, the more impressive it is.
Hmm.
Kind of, you know. There are a lot of choices in this movie that were made where I was like, damn, I can't believe that was approved. Like,
I do think that's
I
like
can't
the
believe that was
theme of
passed.
this
Wow,
project. The
wow.
theme of this episode is just like, damn, like I can't believe they did that. Maybe we're just really
Damn, I
jaded
can't
or
believe.
something, but like, dude, dude.
Maybe we're a little bit cynical.
And I do get surprised a lot for this movie, even if it wasn't anything
I did
particularly
too.
like radical. It was still just amazing that it happened.
And it was still, I know, I think so many pieces must have fallen into place. And obviously, everybody on the film that was working on it worked their fucking asses off on it. Like, even all the extras, like in the movie, like they all killed it. They did such a good job. Um, but I'm glad that they stuck to their guns on making fun of the corporate world. Even though a corporate company was involved, I thought that was a very clever choice. What did you think about the way that obviously Barbie is like she's a product,
Hmm.
right? Um, What did you think about the meta commentary of Barbie being a product, and the way that she has affected the real world, right? And Sasha does talk about that, right? Where she's like, "You've ruined body images for so many women. You encourage hyper consumerism. You're like an economic ploy. All of these things, like that." That commentary on Barbie and kind of the way that they link it back to this like corporate world full of white guys, right? Like, what do you think the impact of that like would have on just, a regular audience, like somebody who obviously like wasn't expecting it to be all of this stuff? Like, if you were watching the Barbie movie and you didn't really know much about like the economic state or anything like that, like what would you take away from like those scenes, do you feel like?
Man, like this was definitely something I struggled with the movie a lot, right? Trying
Uh-huh.
to like square the dissonance between like the movie like trying as hard as it is to like really tackle these problems, but also knowing at the end of the day this is a consumerist like product, and like Sasha like is right on a lot of fronts in which like Barbie like does play into those things. Uh and like I don't know, something that like I find interesting. I don't know if I could say I like it, but I do find it interesting that like the movie never like refutes those like arguments, right? Like Sasha in the
Mm-hmm.
movie is like pretty much never challenged for the things that she says because she's just kind of right.
Mm-hmm.
Right? But instead the movie then takes like the step, especially towards the end of the movie, of trying to like redefine Barbie in this modern world, right? And seeing and trying to explain what she can now represent beyond that, if that makes any sense, you
Mm-hmm.
know?
Mm-hmm.
And like I feel I like the thought, I like the idea. I'm not sure, it does get kind of hazy about whether this is just like corporate rebranding or this is a genuine thing of the art maker, and like frankly it's probably both. Right, which is
Mm-hmm.
why I say I find it interesting more than I like it, you know.
Yeah.
Like it is something that like that I have been like wrestling with in my head throughout watching the movie and like the day in between us watching the movie and recording this, and I'm still not quite sure what I think about it. Frankly.
Uh-huh. That's fair. That's fair. I feel like I also have a lot of things to sort out with this movie, and just in terms of like having only watched it once. I feel like for most of the art that we've talked about on the channel, I've watched at least twice. Um, I say that with a grain of salt. There's probably a couple that I haven't, but with this, it's just like so fresh in my brain that I feel like a lot of the stuff that we are talking about, I'm kind of dissecting as we go.
Mm.
Um, Something that I really appreciated about the movie is like it's kind of towing the line, obviously, between it is a consumerist product while also criticizing consumerism. But there's this really interesting meta commentary within that of like it being a film
Mm-hmm.
because it's a piece of art,
Yeah.
and you can, and it's been done and it happens, obviously. You can make art into a consumerist thing where you make it a part of the economy and it operates that way, but there is that also like meta philosophical aspect of art where you're like, yes, you can buy art. Yes, you can technically legally own art, but can you ever really own art? Um, and doesn't art on its own, in its own way, as a piece of something that is like a creative expression, stand on its own outside of economic pressures or outside of, societal, um, like pre misconceptions, like does the Barbie movie stand on its own as a piece of art outside of the consumerist world, but or like it does as a commentary of consumerism? Like, does it have to stay within that realm for those criticisms to be valid? Do you kind of see where I'm getting at?
Yeah.
Does that make a sense?
Yeah. I get what you're saying. I'm not sure. So like the question is like can like this piece of art stand outside of like the consumer like the consumerism that like created it, right? By the structures and system that.
That, yes. So can it stand outside of the structures that created it while simultaneously criticizing it, or does the criticism of the consumerism mean that it is inextricable from that consumerism that it's trying to separate itself from?
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting question for this movie in particular because in general, I want to say no. I don't think art created by the consumerist machine can really stand outside of it. But this movie tries really, really hard to stand outside of it, right?
Yeah.
Right, and that's the thing that I think makes it very difficult to square, right? Because like by pretty much every other piece of media art that I've thought about, that really is a product of like the system that bore it. It's really hard to ever really separate those things, right?
Mhm.
Um, and I'm not particularly willing to just give an exception to one thing, but on the other
Mhm.
hand, it does really genuinely try really hard, right? I think by the fact that like it has a character like Sasha saying the things that she does, and not ever being really told that she's wrong in particular. Maybe she could be a little less cynical, sure, is what the movie says, but like she's not wrong, right?
Yeah.
Um, and like making fun of the corporate leadership and stuff like that, right? Those are indicators that the movie is trying to buck against the system that created it. But on the other hand, it also probably like if you really want to buck against the system, she probably could have gone harder too, you know? So like
Yeah.
so like does it
I
does it stand outside of the system? I'm not convinced it does, even though it tries really hard.
I think that any piece of art ever, by nature of being art, does in some way, shape, or form exist outside of a consumerist perspective just because it's something that somebody has created. And even if it's based on like economic principles, I mean, like you can kind of like, okay, so like, take Oppenheimer for example, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like that is a piece of art that's technically about physics, right?
Mm-hmm.
But like, does that movie stand on its own outside of like the realm of physics? Yeah, it does, right? And so, for, like with Barbie, I'm the thing that I struggle with the most on it, is like as much as we would love to criticize like the consumerist aspect of the movie, and as much as I think that like there are parts of that movie that do exist outside of like the consumerist perspective, just because there are parts of the movie that don't have anything to do with the consumerist aspect that it's trying to criticize. I think the fact that they go so hard after that criticism, and they kind of like really nail it on the head, means that it isn't, you can't separate it from that consumerist realm. It's always going to have that in it just because of the way that it criticizes it and the way that it goes after it so hard. But I think that like the mindset that they had going after that isn't necessarily like a consumerist perspective.
Mm-hmm.
So they didn't, at least for me in my pea brain, what I'm thinking is like it's extricable from consumerism to the point where like the person who made those ideas and they were like, no, I want the white guys in the corporate room, I want that to be a creative choice, and I want like Sasha to have these ideas of like, yes, like Barbie is a capitalist tool and she has been used as such, like having that commentary, like I don't think those choices were because of a consumerist perspective, and so for that I give the creative points, and I like can take that out of
but
that.
also the movie never pulls the trigger on taking down those corporate consumerist capitalistic structures, right? The
Mhm.
boardroom criticism is not a criticism of the capitalist structures that create boardrooms. It's a criticism of the fact that boardrooms are straight white men, right? But the
Yes.
movie never actually pulls the trigger on saying that like the whole consumerist capitalist thing is something worth deconstructing, right? In
Mm-hmm.
fact, I think we actually leave the movie with those things still intact. Like the Barbie land, like after Barbie Land goes back to like after Barbies take Barbie Land back from Ken's, they basically re-implement these structures, but just with women on top. So the criticism really ends up being that like the problem isn't the capitalist consumer structures in general; it's just specifically the gender part of it, right?
Mm.
And in that way, I
Interesting.
don't think I in that way I can definitely see the fingerprints of the consumer structure systems and structures that made this movie, right?
Mm.
Because like,
Mm-hmm.
and we go back to intersectional feminism, right? Like, a truly
Yeah.
intersectional feminist approach to this would actually probably have, when the Barbies take back over from the Kens, would probably have them rethinking a lot of the things and structures, right? In which, and not try to replicate the ones that the patriarchy creates, but just with women instead, you know?
Mm-hmm. That's a good point. I do think this movie does fall into that one pitfall of like, and I don't necessarily think it's a pitfall, but I do think that this is an argument that many people are going to make after coming out of the Barbie movie of
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, like would the world be better if women ran it? And obviously, like the thing that that most people say about that is like, oh, well, it wouldn't be better or worse. It would just be different. And for me, I think that's such a fucking cop out answer, but like it's the answer, I guess, right? Like, at the basis level, it's true that things wouldn't necessarily be better or worse. They would just be different because we don't know how different they would be because that's not our status quo right now. But, and with Barbie and just the, everything goes back to normal and like it's a matriarchy again after like the big bad patriarchy is defeated and it's like the real world is still a patriarchy and like what's going on, right? So it does kind of, I believe, does fall into that pitfall of like, oh well, like everything's back to quote unquote normal, but the status quo was never perfect either way.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, so definitely it kind of trips over its own shoe there, I think. But
Yeah, I don't think it
yeah,
particularly makes it a
no.
bad movie, but to answer the specific
Yeah, no.
question of like, can this movie be removed from like the consumeristic structures and systems that brought it forth, I'm going to use that as my answer to say no.
Okay. That's fair enough. That's fair enough. I don't know whether or not I fully agree or disagree yet, but I'm glad that I like heard you talk about it for a second because it's helping me organize my thoughts on it. I'm asking some hard-hitting questions today.
Yeah.
I hope you don't mind.
I mean, like,
Um,
this is literally part of the reason why we like made the podcast. Like I remember
that's
very
also
specifically
true.
saying like, sometimes we need to just work out some art, and
Yeah.
this is it. We're just
This is us working out art, guys. Um, okay, so last but not least, I did want to pick your brain on. Oh, okay, so at the sort of at the end of the movie, right, when Barbie's like, I want to be human, and also throughout the movie, she's kind of grappling with like being a normal person, a person who has anxiety and problems and is nervous and is scared and has, emotions that are very real that people
it's
deal with every
us.
single day. It's
It's
us! It's
us.
literally us! Um, I guess, what do you think is the obviously everybody's going to have a different answer for this, and I think that that's important cuz like that's kind of the point of Barbie wanting to be human and like having all of these complex feelings is that she's like, I know it sucks, but at the end of the day I still do want to be human. I'm curious as to like how you felt about her choice and how you feel about the way that they kind of work out this dilemma for her of like, oh, I'm feeling all these feelings and I don't really know what to do with them, but in the end still choosing to like feel all of them and feel human and be all of that. Like from an artistic perspective, from I guess like even a philosophical perspective, like how do you feel about that choice and like how do you feel about the messaging behind that?
I'm so glad you asked me this question. Uh, so you offered me philosophical or like whatever. You offer me two.
I had to give you a little bit
Yeah.
of a bait
You offer
there.
me two options, and I'm going to take a different option.
Oh
I want to look at it
no.
from a cultural perspective because like this is the part of the movie that really made me like tear up, which is like an odd thing to say about like a dude relating to like this part of like a Barbie movie about Barbie, right? But like
Is that weird though, On? I think that just means that you're just a good guy. I think that just means that you're like in touch with your emotions. You don't have any toxic masculinity. That you're like, you know,
we try.
I would not say that like, being upset or being not upset, being saddened by the Barbie movie makes you like that's not weird at all.
But like I find it really interesting from like a cultural lens because like I don't. Okay, so movies that I've watched recently that have like a similar thing. Everything Everywhere All at Once, Suzume, Spider
Yes.
Man, and then this, right?
Suzume.
Bro, I actually cried in Suzume, like hard, hard. We'll talk about that one day. Um,
We will, we will.
and like I find this like
It's funny though.
I've been noticing this theme as the millennials start being old enough to make art, right?
The
I
millennials.
mean, like, right? Um, this theme about like growing up into this like awful, scary, really stressful world, and the people who are supposed to be protecting you can't, right?
Mhm.
We see that in Everything Everywhere with Joy's character in relation to Michelle Yeoh's character, right? How Joy's
Mhm.
growing up and she's like basically going through this existential crisis, and her mom really can't figure it out, right? And that's like
Mhm.
the ultimate thing that's like freaking Joy out, right? Because like
Mhm.
a bit of a tangent for this movie that we will get to one day. Like
We
Joy's
will.
ultimate goal is to just like have her mom look into the void with her, right? Because she's
Mhm.
scared because it's awful and
Mhm.
scary, and she just needs her protector, her mom, to get it because someone, please,
Mhm.
someone, fix this for me, right? It's
Mhm.
scary. Same thing with Spider-Man. We see that with like Miles's mom at the beginning where she's like letting Miles go chase after Gwen. She's like, like
Mhm.
protect this kid from me because I can't, right? Yeah,
Mhm.
I don't know if you've watched Suzume. Um,
I've watched some of it.
okay, spoilers for the end. At the end, it's like a time travel thing, right? First, at the beginning of the
Mhm.
movie, she thinks that her mom came and saved her in her childhood, but it turns out at the end that she is the one who came through time travel shenanigans. She's the one who comforted herself. She is the one who ended up
Mhm.
doing it, right? And like that, I think that's the reason why it made me cry so much because like it really hit this like deep emotion in me of like being like a little scared kid about the world being terrible and scary, and like the
Mhm.
only one really being able to like see it and understand and like protect you from it is yourself, right? Like it wasn't her mom the whole time; it was
Yeah.
her, right?
Yeah.
And I think the same thing's happening with this Barbie movie, right? At the end, she meets the creator of Barbie, right?
Mhm.
And she's like kind of scared about becoming human. I think this is genuinely a metaphor about growing up into this
Yo,
world,
yeah.
right? And she's like scared about becoming human, and she turns to like the creator of Barbie, and the creator of Barbie's like, I I can't do any. The creator of Barbie literally says, "You're like one of my own children," right? Like I
Yeah.
can't. I can only do so much, right? Like I can't make this scary world better for you, right? But I can
Mhm.
set you up and like I can root for you and I can be there, right? And like
Mhm.
I, I think it's a real cultural current that's happening, right? The fact that it's
Mhm.
been appearing in so many movies, but also like you see it in general on the internet and like memes and things like that, generally do have this
Mhm.
current of like genuinely being scared about this like crazy world and like feeling like the things that we're supposed to protect us can't and won't, right? Not just parents
Mhm.
but also like government systems and like economic systems and whatnot,
Mhm.
all these things, right? And the movie just being something that can just like pat you on the back and saying there like we see it, we don't know if we can particularly fix it, right? But we see it,
Mhm.
like your pain is not your own alone, right? Like there are other people who are feeling this too. And sometimes when it comes to like suffering and pain, like just knowing that other people feel it too, like doesn't particularly make things better, but
Mhm.
it does make it feel a little less worse.
Mhm. I think that's so true, the current that you're talking about, and I see it a lot, particularly with women. A lot of the female friends that I have in my life, a lot of the female bodied friends I have in my life just don't feel safe in this country anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And We talked about it a little bit earlier when we were talking about like Ken and Barbie walking around, and Ken's just like, there's like no undertone of violence, and Barbie's just like, I'm terrified, and I don't know of what, but it just feels like there is this looming threat over my head, and I'm scared, and I fear, and that's it. It's not fear of blank. It's just fear all the time.
Mhm.
And people underestimate how fucking exhausting it is to live like that all the time.
Yeah.
You don't have a moment to breathe, you don't feel safe in your own skin, and you are correct. It ties into this bigger theme of yes, there's fear. Where does that fear come from? It comes from this fear of not being protected and not being looked after. And yes, that can obviously, feed into the cycle of like parenthood and what it can do for a parent to not be there fully for their child in the way that they need them to. And Everything Everywhere All at Once is obviously the fantastic example of that. But I think that, especially now in the current political climate, there's just fear of like existence. Um,
Yeah.
if you're queer, you should be afraid. If you're a woman, you should be afraid. If you're in any way, shape, or form breaking out of the pretty little box that society has feathered for you, yeah, you should be afraid because we're fucking coming for you. We're coming after you. Um, and the government has made it very clear that they have no intention of protecting us. So I love that you brought up family. I love that you brought up culture. And I wholeheartedly agree. And I just want to shed light more, at least when I was looking at that too, there was just this like solidarity that I felt with Barbie, not just because she was afraid of like the big bad world, but she like, yeah, the big bad world is scary, but it's also like particularly scary for girls.
Mhm.
And she spent the entire movie kind of trying to reconcile that, versus like the safety of her home and where she's felt safe and what she knows is right, and the treatment that she knows that she deserves, and she knows that if she goes out into the real world she's not going to get that.
Mhm.
And yet she still chooses to leave that and like advocate for herself and do what she feels is right. And I think that the choice that she makes is just so fascinating to me because I think it really also harkens back to like, you have to let people make their own fucking decisions. I
Yeah.
think nowadays there is this giant looming hand of control that everybody's trying to have over everybody else. Um, and I see it obviously particularly more with like the conservative party that seems so hell bent on like rallying people to the side of intolerance, where it's like, oh, if you have this opinion, you're wrong and also deserve violence. And that is the solution to this, like, to all of society's problems, is like overwhelming fear and violence that we're going to instill inside of you, and you should just be afraid all the time. Like, of course, it's going to be scary. But the choice that she makes is to like walk into that fear. She doesn't choose to just turn her brain off and live in the pretty little box where she's just perfect little Barbie, and she does whatever the big corporate guys tell her to do and whatever Ken does, and her happy ending is falling in love with Ken. And like, what's Barbie's ending? She falls in love with Ken. That's not her ending, right? There's such a powerful moment, right, where she's just like, I want to be able to pick whatever it is the fuck that I do, even though that's scared and even though there's nobody looking out for me. And that's what got me. That's really what got me. I think that there's just nothing quite compares to
Yeah.
that moment, I think, in the movie where she's just like, okay, like, I've I see it all. I see the struggles. I see what the people before me went through. Let's fucking do this.
Yeah.
Let's be scared. Let's walk through fire. Let's do the hard thing. Let's put myself in the compromising position. Let's be afraid, and let's still fight to live every single day the happiest that we can be. Like, Fuck, man. Fuck. Philosophy from
From a
Barbie,
Barbie
ladies and
movie.
gentlemen. No, really. But yeah, no. That part got me. I was fully sobbing in the theater at that point. Silent tears were running down my face. Um,
It was good.
but no, yeah, that place was that place. That part was really good. um, yeah, bro. Anything else you want to add?
I think I want to like do like a small little thing because the movie actually does a small little thing with it. I I have been, I don't know, recently for like a while, I guess, interested in uh like the academic aspect of how like patriarchy affects men negatively, right? Because like a lot of like our
Mhm.
academic studies of like feminism and stuff like that are like mostly interested in like how patriarchy affects women, and like, you know, fair. I don't blame any any feminist writer for focusing on those issues, right? Because most of them are women. Um, but I also do think that like, sad to say, but like if we are invested in like deconstructing like systems like racial white supremacy, like capitalism or late stage capitalism, or like or like patriarchy and stuff like that, we're gonna have
Mhm.
to get like straight white men on our side about it, right? And like
Yeah.
some of them will be swayed.
Unfortunately.
Some of them will be swayed just because women say like, "Oh shit, like this shit sucks," and they'll be like, "Oh, that
Uh-huh.
sucks. Like I'll be on your side about this." But some of them, genuinely, you're gonna have to convince them by explaining to them how the patriarchy negatively affects them. And I don't think we have enough
Mhm.
scholarship on that, frankly.
Mhm.
Right? And I
I
understand.
think that's very important
Yeah,
for sure. Yeah.
I understand why, and I'm glad that the movie like touches a bit on that enough to start a conversation. Like not a lot,
Mhm.
honestly, right? Which is why I consider what my little rant here like a, not a rant, but my little discussion here like an addendum more than anything. It doesn't touch on it a lot, but it does enough to like talk about to start a discussion where at the end of the movie like the Kens realize that like they are also have been objectified and like lost sight of themselves in
Mhm.
their in like the pursuit of like patriarchy and like late stage capitalist thinking, right? Where like they're literally like, I am more than just like my possessions, right?
Yeah.
um
Yep.
and I think that's like a great jumping off point to really talk about like the way that like patriarchy and like late stage capitalism like kind of intertwine together and create
Mhm.
these like expectations for men that are like wholly like destructive and unrealistic, right? Like
Mhm.
if so much of your identity and being is tied up in having stuff, the fundamental nature of that is that you're always going to be miserable because you will never have enough stuff, right? Having
Yep.
stuff is an unattainable goal, right?
Yeah.
And I really like that it says that pretty clearly, right? Like so many of the things that men are expected to do in order to be a man, right, are things
Mhm.
like work out, or like get like that like hyper masculine like muscled out like roided out body, or like make a lot of money, or like have a lot of stuff, or like have all the bitches, right? And like the fundamental nature of that, like,
I don't think I've ever heard you say that before.
huh? I mean, like,
I don't think I've ever heard you say getting bitches in my life.
I had to put myself into the mindset
No,
of the
really.
patriarchy for a second.
You said getting bitches, and I was like, who? What? What did you just say? Who are you?
Yeah,
No, yeah.
but like the problem with like these like goals that men are expected to strive for, they're fundamentally unending goals, right? There's
Yeah.
no such thing as enough money. There's no such thing as like,
Yeah.
you know, or it's like if you're
The ideal physique.
the ideal
There's no such
physique,
thing.
like it genuinely I think makes men really miserable in a way that they don't completely understand. And I'm glad the literature is starting to be out there about it. Male body dysmorphia
Mhm.
like literature is honestly like really popping off. Like it's actually a thing that's happening. I'm really excited about that, and I'm
Yeah.
hoping that it keeps getting pushed because like I said
Mhm.
earlier, like the sad matter of the fact is that like some people you can only convince in order to see these things as problems if you can convince how it's a problem for them, right?
Yeah.
And like, yeah, I wish it wasn't that way, but like that's also the reality of the situation. So like I am
Yeah,
happy
no.
that we're starting that conversation because
Mm-hmm.
because like I was talking about intersectionality earlier, all these problems are tied together.
Mm-hmm.
If we want to deal with the white
Oh yeah.
supremacy, we have to deal with the patriarchy as well, right? So like I am
Yep.
very invested in all of it because like
Mm-hmm.
we're Asian American kiddos, like you know what this podcast is.
We're working on it,
We're working on
okay?
it.
Dismantling the patriarchy. We're working on feminism. We're working on sexism. Next is classism. We're getting there. We're working on it. Um, I love that you actually brought this up. There's a really really great video that ContraPoints made about like the problem of like male neglect in the realm of what I kind of perceive and what she perceives as well to be this like very rampant hyper awareness of socio like psychosocial problems, right, where we're dropping things like trauma, trauma response, right, trigger. We're using these very psychological terms to describe things that people go through, things that people experience, and everybody in at least in our generation now, right, is very well versed in all of those topics. The place that it sees the most neglect, however, is with boys,
Mm-hmm.
right?
100%.
Boys are still very much encouraged not to share their feelings. They're encouraged not to talk. Boys don't cry. Boys don't show emotion. And if they do, oh, they're fucking pussies. Like, you're such a little bitch. And even in spaces where boys think that it's okay to talk about their feelings, people are shitty.
Yeah.
That's just a like matter of fact, right? Like you can tell your best friend something and he can turn around and spill to whoever and you can't control that, right? Like the world is cruel, people are mean, right? People do mean things and it's hostile out there and honestly like as much as I resent women having to go through such a more stringent upbringing because like they have so many fucking rules they have to follow, it really does prepare us for like how fucking hard the world is going to be. I think that like the one pitfall of like everybody being like, "Oh, guys have it like so easy all the time," is that like we don't really talk about the things that guys don't have easy, and so like when they really go out into the real world, they're like, "Fuck, nobody fucking prepared me for any of this. Like I don't know what to do. Like where, how am I supposed to deal with any of these emotional problems?" If nobody told me how hard it was going to be. And obviously like
Yeah, I think
it's a
that's why you don't
it,
have like a female incel equivalent.
yeah. Because there's nowhere to put those emotions. Like, boys don't know where to put or channel any of those things. And the one thing that they're encouraged to do out of anything, right? The one thing that is, like, I don't fucking understand this, but like, apparently the one healthy thing for guys to do to like let off some steam is to like be violent. That's the only emotional outlet they are given that is socially acceptable for them to have is to literally like physically impose themselves on something else, like whether that be with like guns or with working out really really hard and like making themselves physically larger and more intimidating, right? Whether that be with like being a womanizer, right? Like there's a ton of different things, but it's like most of them are physical and most of them are rooted in this idea of like dominance,
Hmm.
right? And dominance is a concept that is rooted in violence. So,
I
um,
I I mostly agree, but also video games.
and also video game.
And I think you're mostly right, even if you consider, even if I give the counterpoint of video games, because a lot of men take video games as a competitive thing, right?
Yeah.
Um, but well, when you said like the one outlet that men had, I actually thought video games before I thought
Video games
violence.
too,
But
but
I do
also
think you're right.
a lot of video games also have violence in them. Like, like one person shooters,
I'm
a
more
lot of
compelled about like the idea of like dominance and how men engage in video games in a competitive manner. Right? Yeah, there's the
that's also
violence
true.
aspect of it, but I do think
That almost comes secondary to the like
yeah,
competition.
because
Yeah,
like
you're right.
I do play with like a variety of people, Right.
A variety of males.
And women.
You got a good male lineup for your games.
I hate that you say that because I play with a lot of like most of the men I play with are family, so so like
Oh
that
no!
joke just landed so awful and you didn't even
Yeah,
realize
no,
it.
it's not my lineup. It's just the blood lineup. Oh, that was so
You
good.
got it.
The bloodline up, get it?
You got it. You got it.
Clip that right now. um, one final thing I'd like to say on that, and then obviously, like, I'll let you say whatever else that you got to say about it. I think the one thing that frustrates me about conversations about
What's Snowball up to?
Snowball has the zoomies. He's the mad zoomies. Snowball. Meow. Hi. Oh my goodness. Can you hear him?
Oh yeah, I've been hearing him for a while,
Oh
dude.
yeah. Oh okay. What's up? Shush. Okay. Um. God.
You were saying
Team
something
mascot,
really important,
everybody.
weren't you?
I really was. I really was. He was too, though. It's okay. Um.
I wonder how many of your best
When
ideas have been lost because Snowball interrupted your train of thought.
Dude, listen to me. It's basically a liability at this point. Like I have to write shit down, or else it might be gone to the ether forever. Um, I would encourage like any guy that's listening to this podcast that feels compelled to like do their own research on like what. There's this really great book called The Boy Crisis, that I read a really long time ago, but it's really good. It talks a lot about like compartmentalization, and really the science behind why boys are encouraged to shut their feelings down. The main thing that I'm trying to get at here is like if you're interested in this problem, do research on it and really actually become invested in it. Don't be that guy that's like, what about men? And that's the extent of your activism. Um, I definitely like if you're interested in it, go do research on it and like explore what options there are to help and what you can do right to educate yourself on the issue and how it's affecting other people at large. Um, the only time you'll ever see people criticizing you about like checking the stuff like this out, the only time I've ever seen it, is when there's just like some dude that's like, oh, well, what about men? Like, men have problems too. And that's the extent of of how much they're willing to say on it. And they don't actually know anything about it. That's just all they have to say, right? If it's like that, then I'm just going to assume you don't actually care, right? Yes, the patriarchy affects men too, and it's important that that's in part of the conversation, but actually educate yourself on it and don't be that one person that's like,
Mm.
well, what? And then that's it, you know? Because that's not constructive for you, and it's not constructive for the people around you that may or may not have genuine questions about stuff like this. And yeah, just keep learning, kids.
Stay in school, kids.
Stay in school,
That's what we've
kids.
been
I
doing for a
didn't.
while. All right. Is there anything else we gotta say? I feel like we exhausted the man.
No, we
Like
really
I say,
did.
I
We did
exhausted the
good.
topic, but I do think it's gonna be on my mind for a while after this as
Oh
well.
no, yeah. We can also do like a Barbie follow up. Just because this is really fresh. Like I literally watched it
Yeah,
yesterday.
me too.
So we're both kind of reeling a little bit, I think, from
Yeah.
this
I don't think we
experience. So we're
figured
definitely
everything
gonna have to
out.
come
Like
back
like
to
there
it.
there
Oh
were a lot we talked
no.
about, but there's still some things that I think that are still worth re
Yeah,
coming back
absolutely.
to. We've still,
Absolutely. Which no promises because we're kind of bad at those, but
we
we
are a
will.
little
We
bad
will.
at this.
Maybe.
Whatever the whims come. Fruits Basket Part 3, right? Eventually.
No, no, for real. For real. Yeah. I don't.
Whenever that
Maybe.
happens.
All right.
All right. We'll sign off then.
Bye bye.
This podcast was produced by Yeji.
It was created and written by both of us.
It was edited by me.
The cover art was done by my good friend Emma Nebecker.
And the background art for the videos were done by my good friend Penelope Moreno.